Hey guys, sorry I'm running late today. Whiteboard Wednesday. Really excited for this one. Gonna be talking about a really good issue today. For those of you who haven't tuned in before, this is season 2. This is actually episode 8. My apologies. Let me fix that right away. Season 2, episode 8, and today we are gonna be talking about how to sell a house if it's rented out. So if you're a landlord and you're planning on selling your property, it has a tenant in it, and you have a tenant in it, a question that we commonly get is, can I sell it with my tenant in place? Personally, we always prefer, when possible, for the tenant to not be in place. We like to always prefer to buy a vacant property. But we do buy properties that have tenants in them, or that will assume the existing lease, etc. So today, again, so can I sell my house with my tenant in place? The answer to that is yes, you can. There are a couple of things that we're going to talk about today, and a lot of this is just the way we approach things and kind of the certain things as buyers when we're buying something that we like to see. And so there's a lot of different ways to quote unquote skin the proverbial cat. And what we're going to talk about today is just our specific approach, the documents we like to see in place, the questions we ask, and what timeline it is, etc. If you've watched our videos before, or if you've read anything on our website, you've probably heard or seen this. The first thing that we're going to get in place, is obviously a copy of the lease. Then number 2, we're going to get an estoppel letter. And for us, it's really these two things. And I'm going to go over why these two things are important, and then some of the different variations or questions that can arise from this. Copy of a lease. It's really important that there's a written lease, because when we as a buyer inherit a tenant or inherit a rental, then we need to know what has been agreed upon by the previous owner and us, so we can fulfill it. So when we buy it, if there's an existing lease in place, that lease, our obligation as buyers is to hold up the lease from the landlord's perspective, even if it's not a lease we originally wrote. And so when we go in and we do that, we want to know what the copy of the lease is, so that we know what are the terms that we're agreeing to on how we're going to manage this property. And then the second thing is the estoppel letter. And the estoppel letter basically confirms and verifies that this lease is accurate, true, and it's in good standing. Estoppel letter will clarify and confirm things like the amount of rent, if everything's been up to date, are there any pending conflicts between the tenant and the owner of the property or the landlord of the property. And the estoppel letter is really powerful, because if there's not a written lease, then the estoppel letter can serve as a stopgap, and that can serve as a lease until you get a new full executed lease in place. Oftentimes, we will run into situations where somebody's interested in selling. They have a tenant and they want to sell with the tenant in place, so they don't want to disrupt, that relationship or whatnot. And it's a verbal lease, where they don't know where the copy of their lease was. And so what we do in that situation is we skip over the copy, we go straight for an estoppel letter, and our estoppel letter at that point is going to be a little bit more robust than if there's not a written lease. So when there's no written lease, our estoppel letter is going to try to cover everything, like when did you move in? When are you planning to move out? Is there a security deposit? Is there a pet deposit? How much is rent? Have you paid rent on time every month? Is there any money owed on either side? Things of that nature, just to make sure that there's no gray areas and we get everything in writing. Once we get the estoppel letter, then we, as buyers, if there's no written lease, we will propose and would like to get the tenant who's staying to sign a new lease that's on our paperwork, and that would be the next step. So estoppel letter, then we get them on our new lease, and then it's smooth sailing from that point forward. The biggest thing about selling with a tenant in place is, as the seller, if you're selling, Make sure you have your ducks in a row. This is really important. Have proof of the security deposit. Have proof of the pet deposit. Have a copy of the lease. If there is a security deposit, that security deposit transfers at closing oftentimes to the buyer. And so you need to be able to provide that at closing. And then if you're watching this or if you hear this and you are a tenant, it's the same thing as when you go meet with the prospective buyer. Make sure to have your ducks in a row. Have the receipts of rent paid, have a copy of your lease, have proof of your the pet deposit, etc. So the more paperwork, the more proof that you have of whatever agreement you're living under, the better and the smoother the transaction is going to go for everybody. So once again, y'all, hope this found this helpful. Feel free to share it, tag somebody in it. We always appreciate any sort of social media love. Once again, season 2, episode 8. Hope you all have a good day, and we'll see you all next week.